welcome back to my channel. My name is Kat. I've been living in Perth, Australia for 2 years now, and this is why you should be choosing Perth over any other state in Australia. So Perth gets a very bad reputation. It gets a reputation for being boring, for being in the middle of nowhere, for having nothing going on. People have asked me quite a few times why I've chosen Perth. Or why not the East Coast. So let's dive in and see what those reasons are and if it's fair that it has the reputation that it does. So in 2021, Perth did actually get into the top 10 most livable cities in the Global Livability Index. So that is a pretty huge thing. It has now actually slid down to, I think, 32. I think largely it getting into the top 10 was due to how Perth was in the pandemic compared to a lot of other places in the whole world. There was almost no restrictions compared to a lot of other places, so that does very much skew it. But I think it's a fair rating. I love it. So I will do a disclaimer, I am very biased. I've also only lived in Perth, I've not lived in any of the other states. If you have lived in the other states, if you live there now, or especially if you've lived in a few, jump down into the comments, let me know what I've missed out, and let me know the areas where maybe the East Coast or Northern Territories or South Australia pip it to the post. But yeah, this is my personal experience of Perth so far in 2 years, and I'm sure I will only keep growing to love it and experience it more. And maybe I'll have more things in time to add to my why not to move to Perth list, which I'll link up here for you to watch after this one if you liked this. Okay, I'll start with the tangible things and the things which kind of are the most well known about Perth, but also a really, really strong argument. So first things first, the economy. We have a really strong economy in Perth. It is a very wealthy city. West Australia is a very wealthy state. And this is due to the abundance of natural resources that are in Perth. So there's a lot of mining for coal, oil, other things that people mine for, diamonds? I don't know. There was a massive mining boom in 2000s and 2010s, which led to a lot of migration, people coming to Perth, a lot more jobs, a lot more wealth, and slowly the economy started really, really growing. And right now we are actually seeing a bit of another boom. So a lot of people are migrating. Perth has seen quite a lot of people moving over from the East Coast to the West Coast in the last couple of years, potentially due to job availability or just generally seeing how we dealt with the pandemic. It is the most isolated city in the world. That is perfect for pandemic life. We closed the borders and we had the largest space imaginable to play in and live our daily lives in, which probably made it quite attractive to people moving over. 6 of the top 10 ASX listed businesses are headquartered in Perth. Within that, there's obviously a lot of job availability, they pay really well, and also there is a massive amount of FIFO work available in Perth, which is the people who go out, work on the mines. And because it's quite extreme, quite tough conditions out there, the pay packets that they deliver in return are quite sizable. So overall, as you can see on this map of Australia, both the yearly income and the overall wealth is actually the highest in WA out of any state in Australia. So you can see immediately the wealth is obviously going to be a draw card for this state. Okay, myth busting time. People quite often say, okay, well, you've got high salaries in Australia, but it's actually a higher cost of living. Now, that's definitely true. It's definitely true that it is definitely not cheap to live in Australia. However, Perth does actually have the lowest cost of living out of the other states, with the exception of Adelaide and Hobart. So you can see from this chart that the cost of living is cheaper than in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Darwin. Is more expensive than Adelaide, Hobart and Canberra. And Perth is acknowledged as one of the most affordable capital cities in Australia. It is currently the 4th most populated city in Australia, projected to become the 3rd biggest in the next sort of 5 years' time. So as capital cities go with a lot of economy and the higher salaries, it actually isn't doing too bad in terms of the cost of living. I've put a cost of living comparison guide down in the description box from Finder. It's actually generally a really, really good guide it talks through transport costs, house prices, fuel prices, all of those sorts of things, and breaks it down per state. So if it is something which you're in the early stages of considering and you think that the cost of living is going to be a big consideration for you, then definitely go and check out that resource. I found it really useful. And you might be thinking house prices are crazy. They're generally not too bad. You're looking at a median house price of about 612,000 compared to in Sydney 1.6 million, and Melbourne 1.1 million, Brisbane 792,000. It's really not doing too bad, again, when you're comparing with the big fish of the kind of big capital cities elsewhere in Australia. So talking of houses and neighbourhoods, I thought I would touch on the location, geography, neighbourhoods, that sort of thing. So Australia has the most incredible coastline. It is home to multiple beaches which have been crowned best beach in the world, and you will be hard pressed to find any beaches anywhere else in the world that are as beautiful. We have the likes of Turquoise Bay, we've got Misery Bay, which is an amusing name to me considering it is so gorgeous, but also just the beaches, which are a 20-minute drive from Perth city centre, are glorious, beautiful, blue sea, white sand, amazing. And I think the only other main city in Australia of those kind of big four capital cities is probably Sydney, that has the proximity to the beach and beautiful beaches. Melbourne, I think, is too cold to go to the beach, and Brisbane is a bit too inland, so it's not going to be, you've got to travel a little bit to go to the beach, whereas in Perth we are very lucky to have plenty of neighbourhoods that are on the beachfront, but 15 to 20 minutes into the CBD by car, so it really does make it a very attractive place to live. Also, due to the expanse of the state of Western Australia in general, the massive variety of different landscapes that you get is just absolutely incredible. You've got the amazing beaches, you've got desert, you've got reefs up north, you've got wine regions, you have really green spaces and mountains down in sort of Albany, Denmark area, and it is just incredible that all of that is on your doorstep and all within the same state. There's also a river running through the city. I personally love to be by water sources. I actually find it quite important to have a river through a city. I think it really, even though you're in the CBD, you've still got that kind of connection to nature, which I really love. And it opens up the opportunity to firstly live on the river, which is a lot cheaper than living on the beachfront, and also just water-based activities, being either in or near the water or on the water. You can be doing kayaking, paddle boarding, going out on your speedboat if you have one, or you can just have a picnic by the river, and it is just gorgeous. We've also got the wine region, so within 40 minutes of the city centre is the Swan Valley, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous wine region, and then a couple of hours down south, I think about a 3-hour drive, is Margaret River, so another world famous wine region that is just gorgeous. There's loads of wineries down there. It's an absolutely beautiful, beautiful part of the world. Then you've got islands, so we've got the likes of Rottnest Island, which is home to the quokkas. I think quokkas should be a standalone reason to be in Perth. It's the only place that they live naturally. Rottnest Island is I think 30-minute ferry away from Fremantle, which is in Perth, and it is the most stunning, again, beautiful beaches, a very quiet, slightly habited island, and it just makes for the best day trip. Perth is also a gateway city for international travel due to its location. It's actually used quite often as a stepping stone from the East Coast to go to Singapore, Dubai, Europe, anywhere. But we get the benefit of not having to do that 4 or 5 hour flight to get to Perth to get to anywhere else. We're about 5 hours away from Singapore, 3 or 4 hours away from Bali. Compared to the rest of Australia, it is really quite well connected. However, you might not feel like you need to go away that often. I know that we, since living here, do not feel like we need to go to far-flung destinations for holidays necessarily, because the climate here is just gorgeous. So we get about 140 days of sun per year. The winter is wet. I touch on that in my other video where I'm talking about the downsides of Perth, but it is pretty much guaranteed to be blue sky days, sunshine every day in the summer, and it is a dry heat, which is, if you've been to the likes of Brisbane in summer where it is humid and your hair goes frizzy, it is pretty unbearable. So to have it hot, it does kind of peak at about 43, 44 degrees on the hottest days, but it is a dry heat, so it's a lot more manageable. So I touched on the population and the growth. So Perth is looking like it's going to be the third most populated city within the next 5 years. As such, there is so much development going on and investment into the city and the surrounding suburbs. There is neighbourhoods just kind of growing and growing, kind of north and south of Perth, to create really good kind of lifestyle villages, perfect for families. The West Coast is very underdeveloped in terms of urbanisation, so there is a lot of opportunity to build these neighbourhoods right by the ocean, still sort of 45-minute drive away from the CBD, and there's just a lot of regeneration and urbanisation happening and development happening in Perth. It's a very exciting time to be in Perth, and I think the amount of investment that is going on within the city and within the surrounding areas is really exciting. I think it will be becoming an even more attractive place for people to be moving to. And finally, this is something which did feature on my negatives list, but I'm going to spin it on its head. It is the way of life in Perth and the slow, chilled nature. So in Perth, there really is a culture of slowing down. The shops aren't open as late. It's not a wild party city. It's not so much work hard, play hard. It's just chill. And I personally really like that. I think especially for families, there is no better place. The playgrounds that are in Perth are second to none. They are incredible, and I can't wait till I've got children to have an excuse to go on them. The outdoor activities that are everywhere are just fantastic. In summer, there is quite a number of outdoor markets, or just a really outdoorsy lifestyle where you are having picnics on the beach or on the foreshore. There's food markets, there's moonlit cinemas, there's these sorts of activities where it's all about getting together, all of your friends, all of your family, eating good food, and there is really good food in Perth. It is second to none. And just enjoying each other's company. There is not the hustle and bustle and rush that I feel like I experience in London or Sydney, where everyone's almost too busy to speak to each other and have meaningful interactions. I feel like Perth is really, that's such a strength of the city, is just that everyone has time for each other. Some people are definitely going to comment being like, no, people are rude. But I found there's a real family vibe about Perth, and I think especially for this kind of next life stage that I'm going into, I'm 28, I'm getting married this year, having those family vibes and that chilled, slower pace of life just suits me absolutely perfectly. So there we have it. They are my main reasons why I love Perth and why you should love Perth as well. I think definitely give it a go if you're thinking about it. I would say Perth comes across a lot better when you're living here than when you are on holiday here. I think it's really hard to get a real gauge of the place just by visiting for a week. So I would really encourage you to watch vlogs. I have absolutely heaps of my weekends exploring Perth and just my day-to-day life in Perth, because I think that's where you really see the value of the place, rather than trying to tick everything off in a week. Because it's so vast, you're just not going to get to see everything. I would love to hear down in the comments your thoughts and what you think the best things and worst things about Perth are. Have a watch of my recent video from last weekend, which is the worst things in Perth and the reasons why you shouldn't be living there. And keep an eye out for future videos. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. Bye.